Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Infinite Realms, is interesting because it, A, showcases that Danny is not the first person to try and map out the Ghost Zone. Not by a long shot, we find this out in this episode, but, B, it also kind of foreshadows Vlad's ultimate fate at the end of the series, because we do see a bit of what happened, a bit of that in these episodes. But yeah, in any case, the episode does proceed to open up with Danny, Sam, and Tucker trying to tour around the Ghost Zone, and Danny is apparently they're just hopelessly lost. What we find out is that Danny is using his handmade map that he made of the Ghost Zone to try and navigate them around, but he's, first and foremost, the map's somewhat incomplete, so he doesn't fully understand where he's supposed to go and how. And but he's also just really bad directions in general. And eventually, like Sam and Tucker just get sick of them being lost and point out that they need to stop and ask for directions. They openly admit that Danny needs to figure out how, he needs to figure out where they're going so they can actually get home, pointing out that they've been lost for a while now and they need snacks and other things. And Danny, of course, is insistent that he knows where he's going, but also admits that he'll need some help, at which point they see two ghosts pass by, and Sam does point out that maybe Danny could ask for directions, but Danny's insistent that no, they'll just follow the ghosts around so that they can figure out where they're going. And in the process, Danny proceeds to just follow them all. Sam is just visibly annoyed that Danny why men just do not ask for directions. But it's just a trope, and it isn't very, it's an obvious one. Us guys, we're bad at asking for directions because we're like, oh, we're able to do this by ourselves. We don't need any help. That's very much a stereotype of men behavior, and it's an accurate one. We are stubborn. I'll be perfectly honest. Me and my kind are just stubborn. But in case, they then proceed to follow the ghosts to this frozen tundra wasteland looking place, where of course Danny points out seems to be the right place because he believes that the ghosts know where they're going. But then they accidentally run into two giant icicles, which caused both Danny to crash and the Fenton speeder to kind of crash as well. At which point they proceed to wonder where exactly it is they are, when suddenly they're approached by a giant furry ice monster ghost that just appears and starts attacking them. And of course, Danny is initially confused as to why the monster's attacking them, and also makes a lot of dog jokes at the monster's expense. But then, after fighting for a bit, he eventually figures out why the monster is rampaging and attacking them. As it turns out, there was an icicle lodged in the poor thing's fur, and he's realizing that that's causing a lot of the ghost's ill-tempered behavior. So Danny uses his ghost rays to knock the icicle out of his fur, and with that, the ghost then proceeds to realize that the pain is gone. He proceeds to pull Danny into a hug and thanks him for saving him and helping him alleviate his pain. At which point, the ghost properly introduces himself as Frostbite, leader of the Far Frozen, which, of course, and it's at this point where Danny says it's nice to meet him and introduces himself, and it's at this point where Frostbite immediately recognizes Danny as the savior of the Ghost Zone, and of course immediately welcomes him with open arms, telling him that anybody that Danny and his friends are more than welcome as guests in his village, and also noting that the Fenton speeder is going to need the repairs. He picks it up in one arm and tucks Danny onto his shoulder with the other. And there's a fun thing where he also calls Sam and Tucker quote unquote Danny's quote unquote servants, which of course they take offense to, but Danny just points out silence Sam of the Goth. But in any case, he then proceeds to bring them back to the village, where he then proceeds to reveal that the reason he refers to them as the savior of the Ghost Zone is that apparently they know Danny from when he took out Pariah Dark. They know and of course, Danny has never been to this particular corner of the Ghost Zone, so obviously he did not know that news had traveled to this particular part of it. Danny is, of course, incredibly impressed about the fact that he's quote unquote famous within the Ghost Zone for saving it, and of course, Frostbite does proceed to point out that yes, everything that they do know quite a bit about him, and do point out that they're more than willing to help him with whatever it is he needs, pointing out that they are in his service. But it's at this point where Danny does proceed to point out at Sam's pushing that they are in fact a little bit lost, but it's at this point where Frostbite immediately perks up and immediately leads them into a small room in his village, which he then proceeds to demonstrate that he has just the thing he needs to get them home. At which point he pulls out the Infi-map, which it's essentially this artifact, which as Frostbite explains, is a mostly complete map of the Ghost Zone. As I said, Danny's not the first one to try this. He's not the first one to map out the Ghost Zone, and the Infi-map is essentially a living document of every entrance in and out of the Ghost Zone, every realm that you can travel to within the Ghost Zone, and he also reveals that it's also home to several natural portals that exist in the Ghost Zone. And that last one, Danny is a little bit confused about, pointing out that he thought that the only way in and out of the Ghost Zone was through man-made ghost portals. But Frostbite explains that no, there are in fact portals that exist naturally within the fabric of space-time that will enable somebody to just travel in and out of the Ghost Zone wherever they want. And well, more specifically, you have to find it first. But he does explain that they exist all over. Case in point, he explains probably the most famous of these, the Bermuda Triangle, and of course Sam immediately realizes that that's most likely the reason why so many ships and stuff go missing around the Bermuda Triangle, as you know, the famous legend goes. But Frostbite goes on to explain that the Bermuda Triangle is probably the most famous natural ghost portal. Things wind up going into the ghost portal and going through the Ghost Zone around the Bermuda Triangle, and come out in the exact same place, but not exactly when they enter, revealing that it'll take them across time as well. It'll just deposit them wherever they come in and out. So that's pretty interesting. And of course, Danny is very interested to learn that yes, that is a very interesting idea. And Frostbite proceeds to hand him the Infi-map, and proceeds to explain that as long as they stick close to the path, they will never truly get lost, and they'll take him exactly where they need to go. And of course, Danny then proceeds to pull open the Infi-map, and Frostbite proceeds to explain that the Infi-map will just take them where they need to go, and can read their thoughts, and will actually translate where they're supposed to go. And it's of course at this point where Danny wonders if it'll take them home, or if it'll take them home. At which point, the Infi-map, much to Frostbite's surprise and ultimately fear, the Infi-map then proceeds to take Danny, Sam, and Tucker home, with Frostbite trying to get it back, pointing out that if it falls into the wrong hands, it can be very dangerous. So, but unfortunately, and it's at this point where the Infi-map does in fact bring Sam, Danny, and Tucker home, and they are returned back to the Fenton lab, with them being very happy about the fact that they've returned with it. But of course, Sam does point out that they are definitely going to need to give it back to Frostbite at some point, pointing out that he didn't seem too keen about letting it out of his sight. And Danny, of course, points out that they will bring it back eventually. He proceeds to claim that he'll bring it back, but he does want to at least use it somewhat to figure out various locations and other things within the Ghost Zone, so they can kind of figure out their way around. And of course, he proceeds to, and of course, it's at this point where we discover that Vlad is actually secretly, well, we don't find out right away, but it's revealed that, but we do get a cutaway, but in case it is at this point where we get a cutaway to Vlad, who is alone in a new mansion in Amity Park. He has since, as I said, last review, he has since bought a house in Amity Park and now lives there. He actually, does have a property now, which I should explain. again, he would not be able to do this. He did these in the reverse order. You have to have residency in the town you're going to run for mayor in first before you run for mayor. Otherwise, there's going to be a whole bunch of legal red tape that he's going to have to work through. And he did those in reverse order. I've already said that. But in any case, we find out that Vlad is currently playing chess by himself to an extent, because we find out that contrary to what he said in that one episode, and as foreshadowed in Masters of All Time, he did wind up getting a cat, and he named it Maddie. But in any case, he does proceed to. In any case, he is playing a chess with Maddie the cat, and he does explain that Maddie, that he doesn't seem like Maddie. Maddie is of course very good at it, of course, because Maddie the cat is a cat. Obviously, she can't play chess. But of course, it is at this point where he proceeds to kind of have a bit of a conversation with his cat, where very one-sided, might have mentioned, because cats can't speak on their own, but at least not that I know of. That would be weird. But in any case, he goes on to explain that cat, he's that now that they've played chess, they can sit down and do his favorite, watch some TV before bed. At which point he starts flipping through channels, and eventually reveals that he is in fact spying on the Fentons with secret surveillance cameras that he invented. And of course, he's points out that is his most favorite program, so he decides to settle on that. At which point, he discovers that Danny has found the Infi-map and is currently contemplating taking it back to Frostbite. And of course, Vlad is of course very much surprised that Danny was able to find the Infi-map before he did. At which point, he goes to his books of ancient various documents and other things, and proceeds to reveal that he had been searching for the Infi-map for a long time, because supposedly the Infi-map enables you to find your destiny. So he points out that if Danny has it, he is most likely going to need to get it away from him. So he proceeds to formulate a plan to actually steal the Infi-map. And the first thing he does is actually send one of his mini surveillance camera drones, which is just a bug with it. It's just a bug robot with his face on it. But he sends it to tuck inside of Sam's backpack. At which point he uses it to track their locations. And it's at this point where Danny then proceeds to reveal that that if they're going to use the Infi-map, they might as well use it to see the sights a little bit. And he does proceed to tour the place, and goes and uses the Infi-map to just find his way to go pretty much anywhere. He doesn't specify where he wants to go, just anywhere. And the map very literally just draws a path around the entire ghost zone so they can see the whole thing. So of course, they then proceed to fly through the ghost zone by being towed by the Infi-map, and they pass through several interesting locations as they go through. First and foremost is the River of Blight, which is a river that exists in the ghost zone and has a weird ghost living in it, which is interesting. And they also travel through the Ravenous Cavern, which is revealed to be a carnivorous. Well, it's carnivorous cavern, but still the same point still stands. It is a cavern what that is essentially one giant organism. It will try to eat you, and they quickly discover that. But eventually, they do wind up discovering a portal, and of course they immediately wonder. Of course, Danny wants to poke inside of it, but Sam warns him against that, pointing out that the obvious threat that it's not on the main path, and that they should really stick to the main path. But Danny points out that it's fine, and that he knows that as long as they pop in and out quickly enough, they will probably be fine in terms of the portal closing before they get in and out of it. So it's at this point where Sam and Tucker proceed to jump inside, and it is at this point where we find out that they're in the 40s, which is during President Roosevelt's, what is it? They're in the 40s, which is during President Roosevelt's campaign, and we find out that a mom is tucking her kid into bed, and the kid tells her to check for monsters, but she proceeds to explain that she gets the quote wrong, which we'll get to in a minute, but she proceeds to explain that as President Roosevelt says, said the only thing they have to fear is fear itself. But again, she gets the quote wrong, at which point Danny proceeds to use his ghost powers to scare the kid and their mom half to death while explaining that they got the quote wrong. So, which causes them both to, panic like hell, and of course, Sam proceeds to point out that he really shouldn't have done that because he just scared a poor kid and his mother half to death. But Danny proceeds to point out that he just really hates it when people get historical quotes wrong. So, at which point they proceed to leave back through the portal where they came, and they continue onward. And this time they find another portal, which Danny is keen to jump through. And what we find out is that they have actually arrived in Salem, Massachusetts during the witch trials, which of course Danny and Tucker don't fully understand where they are right away, but Sam knows exactly where they are. They're in Salem during the witch trials, and she proceeds to explain that back in Massachusetts they did used to put innocent people to death, but unfortunately by burning them at the stake. That's kind of slightly historically inaccurate because the Salem witch trials never actually burned anybody. That was mostly an England thing where they burned witches, if I'm remembering correctly. Here in America they did, admittedly, a lot more gruesome stuff, or mainly hanging. But that's just a dark period of history for you. It's just people were that paranoid of witches that they were just killing people for no real reason. It's unfortunate, but in any case, Danny and Tucker do point out that it's kind of cool that they've arrived at Salem, but also meant that they should probably get out of there since Danny's a ghost and will probably be persecuted for being a witch. But of course, Sam runs up and demands proceeds to make various demands of the villagers in Salem. Telling them that they need to know better than to pick on people who are different. But in the process, she winds up getting stuck in a net, where it is then revealed that everybody proceeds to think she is a witch. And she proceeds to claim that she's not a witch, but it's at this point where it's revealed that Vlad had actually beaten them there, and reveals that actually she is a witch and must be burned. So, and of course, Sam proceeds to, climb into. They proceed to cut Sam down from the net, and proceeds to pull her over, and proceeds to drag her over to where they're putting the stake to burn people. And she is obviously very visibly frustrated about the fact that very visibly angry about the fact that they've tied her to a stake and are about to burn her. But of course, Vlad, to kind of sell the point, then waits for Danny to jump in right on cue. And of course, Danny immediately comes to Sam's aid, and it's at this point where they're actually approached by John Fenton Nightingale, who is Danny's ancestor and bears a striking resemblance to Jack. And what we find what we find out is that John is actually very different. Is actually very similar to Jack, but also kind of different. He's kind of an old-timey version of Jack, but because ancestor, that's kind of implied. But he of course then proceeds to reveal that not to worry, because he will keep the dark spirit away from its evil master, using a series of little blooms that are referred to as blood blossoms. And he proceeds to scatter them around the witch stake to keep Danny away. And Danny of course initially believes that the blood blossoms won't do anything to him, but quickly discovers that no, that's exactly the opposite. And as Vlad explains, they are actually a natural remedy that are designed to have actually been around for a long time, but they're one of the main weaknesses of ghosts. But we don't see them because I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they're extinct. Maybe they just stopped existing. I don't know what happened, or maybe they're just rare nowadays. I don't know. They've never come up before. They come up here, but essentially, Vlad proceeds to explain that they're designed to weaken a ghost's natural defenses before throwing them into the circle of them, which unfortunately causes Danny to become very weak. And Vlad, taking the opportunity of Danny's weakened state, steals the Infi-map from him, and then proceeds to take his leave by using the Infi-map telling it to show him to his destiny. at which point he proceeds to leave through the portal that was opened, and while Sam tries to warn Tucker tries to warn them that the portal is going to close if they don't hurry up, and they need to figure out a way to get both Danny and Sam out of there. And of course, what we find out is that according to Jack Fenton Nightingale, not only are blood blossoms, a good natural remedy to defend against ghosts, but also witches, according to himself. But he also claims that they make a good snack, which gives Sam an idea and tells Tucker to eat all of the blood blossoms, which of course Tucker openly objects to, pointing out he's a carnivore, he doesn't eat plants, but she insists that he has to. So he proceeds to unfortunately eat all of the blood blossoms, much to his chagrin. He doesn't like doing it, and this enables Danny to regain his full strength. And now with his full ghost powers, he's able to use his abilities to turn Sam intangible, so that he can get both her and Tucker out of there and proceed to fly back through the portal they went through. And of course, Tucker, quickly realizing Vlad was going to get away, does also reveal that he had actually hacked into Vlad's surveillance bug once having discovered it in Sam's bag, and reveals that he actually used it to track Plasmius instead. So now they know where he's going rather than the other way around. But and Sam points out that's pretty cool that Tucker did that, but also is more curious about how Tucker's body is going to be feeling now that it's eaten a bunch of roughage. And after 14 years of not eating anything plant-based, and Tucker admits that it's probably going to be fine, but then we hear his stomach rumble, and from this point onward, a recurring joke is that wherever they wind up, Tucker tries to look for a bathroom, because it unfortunately the blood blossoms go right through him and mess up his metabolism. So unfortunately he has to go a lot during this episode. But in case they then proceed to follow Plasmius through another natural ghost portal into ancient Rome, where we discover that Vlad has actually used his ghost powers to essentially rule over Rome like a god. And of course Danny proceeds to wonder what he's done, and Vlad proceeds to point out that all he really did was float a little, pointing out that they thought that obviously ancient Romans, very superstitious, very much believe in deities and a higher power. So when they saw Vlad floating, they just immediately assumed he was a god and had some sort of godlike power. It's revealed that they proceed to erect a statue in his honor, and of course Vlad Danny threatens to fight Vlad, but Vlad proceeds to point out that Danny will be doing nothing of the sort. At which point they summon the man-eating lions for Danny to for the trio of them to fight again while he watches for his amusement. And Danny, of course, is able to get them out of there by using his intangibility and takes over a suit of armor to kind of ambush Vlad, and at which point the two fight properly, and in the process, Vlad accidentally destroys ancient Rome, which of course causes everybody to reject him as an evil god who's there to smite them, and of course, Danny proceeds to point out that he needs to that if Vlad wants to be worshipped like a god, he should really take better care of his people. So, because of Vlad's clumsy aim, he winds up getting kicked out of ancient Rome. So, unfortunately for him, he has to find another place to try and take over. So he proceeds to tell the map to take him to another place to show him his destiny. At which point, it takes him out through the natural ghost portal again with Danny, Sam, and Tucker in a hot pursuit. And this time, it takes him to It takes him to an old Buddhist, to an old Shaolin temple, where he proceeds to successfully fight off all of their best warriors and asks them to make them rule over them. But it's at this point where Danny appears, and yet again, Danny, also dressing as a samurai in this point, proceeds to fight Vlad using ecto swords. They create swords out of ecto energy to fight with, which is kind of cool. And again, in the process, they accidentally destroy the temple, and because the Shell and warriors are not particularly happy about the fact that Vlad destroyed their temple, insist that they're never going to serve under him as well. So Vlad is once again forced to abandon yet another realm that he's visited and continue going onward. At which point, Danny, Sam, and Tucker try to catch up with him, and Danny finally tries to warn Vlad, pointing out that he really should stop messing around with the Infi-map, pointing out that its power is far too great for Vlad to ever fully comprehend, as according to Frostbite. So, but Vlad, of course, insists that will do nothing of the sort, and proceeds to explain that proceeds to tell the Infi-map that if it knows what's good for them, good for him, and knows what's good for it will take him to his destiny, no questions asked. At which point, it does proceed to do exactly that. It leads him through the ghost zone, and eventually Vlad winds up in a frozen wasteland where there is nothing to rule over. And of course, Vlad is very visibly confused, pointing out that he doesn't understand why the map has taken him here. But to this point, it's revealed that Frostbite and his fellow Far Frozen have actually been waiting for Vlad, and were waiting for the map to come back to them, and insist that they give him the map back. And when Vlad refuses, they just casually beat the shit out of him off screen, and take the map away from him. With Vlad, of course, being forced to do a hasty retreat once the map has been taken from him. And it's at this point where Danny wondered how they would know that Vlad would be there. And they proceed to explain that the Infi-map works in mysterious ways, and reveals that it is kind of sentient. Sometimes it sometimes takes people where they want, not necessarily where they want to go, but where they need to go. And this, of course, makes Danny realize that they knew that the map would eventually lead Vlad back to them, so that they could take it back from him. And they do, and of course, it's at this point where Frostbite does thank them for their help in returning the map. And does tell them that they're welcome anytime. At which point, Danny, Sam, and Tucker get back into the now fixed Fenton speeder and fly off. And one of the Far Frozen then proceeds to ask their leader if they think that Danny will ever come back. And Frostbite explains that he has to, and proceeds to exclaim that Danny is more alike to them than he realizes, implying that Danny is going to get a new ghost power from them at some point in the near future. But in cases at this point where they proceed to return home, and Danny admits that he's unfortunate that they had to take an unfortunate joyride, but is happy to be back. But in case the episode then ends with a new statue unveiling at Amity Park, where it is revealed that Vlad had actually gotten frozen from the whole ordeal, and was propped up as a statue until he thaws out. With the unfortunate ending scene of that being that Vlad unfortunately gets pooped on because he's now a statue. So yeah, unfortunately that is how the episode ends. But or at least for Vlad. But I should mention, first and foremost, this episode does foreshadow that Danny will eventually get a new ghost power. They do explain that. And obviously, the episode also explores a lot more about the Ghost Zone, about how it has a lot of natural formations that exist, and also explains that there's a lot of natural ghost portals that exist in the world as well that will take people to both various locations and different points in time. I find that kind of interesting. But also, something more important that will be notable is that in this episode, Vlad, the Infi-map did ultimately take Vlad to his fate, which I will get to, which I'm going to explain. Because here's the thing, the episode shows that Vlad had been kicked out of every single realm that he had tried to take over by force, and the end result is that he eventually wound up in a place where there was nobody to rule and he was all by himself. That is foreshadowing for how the series ends. If you know how the series ends, you know what's coming. But yeah, that does foreshadow what Vlad's ultimate fate is going to be. I do kind of like that. But yeah, in case that is going to do it for today's review. But in case, what did you guys think? Let's go discussing in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. be sure to go and check out my Discord. Link is down in the description. We're going to be doing a horror movie watch-along thing this weekend. It's probably most likely Sunday, because I have a scheduling thing that came up, and unfortunately it's something that's it's just unfortunately a personal thing. I'll explain more, not in a video, but I'll explain more later when I get to it. But yeah, that's unfortunately a thing that just happens. But we'll get to it. I'll explain. But yeah. In any case, also be sure to go and check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays. Please go check those out. Be sure and go and check out my Patreon. It helps support me. I would appreciate it if you were to do that. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The playlist linked in the end screen. Top playlist is the most recent playlist, which is Megas Month. I did that for my birthday last year, so please go check that one out. Whereas the playlist previous to this one is Courage Month, which is more horror themed, and I think Halloween-y themed. So I think you guys would like that one. But yeah, if you haven't checked either of those out, please go do that. I put a lot of work into those. So, but in any case, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.